Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week in partnership with the Daily Beast. Foreign editor Christopher Dickey is with us. So is James Macaulay, Paris correspondent for The Washington Post. Philippe Moreau-Chauvelet, contributor to the French edition of The Huffington Post, Slate, and others. And Hamdan Mostafavi, reporter for the French news magazine Courrier International, which compiles what's going on in the world's press. We were talking about Matteo Renzi, the Prime Minister of Italy, speaking out on welcoming refugees and migrants in part one of our discussion, his political fate, and that more broadly of the center-left, tied to a December 4th referendum to most notably downsize the Italian Senate. Speaking of that, the center-left's fate, patience paying off for the right in Spain. The outgoing prime minister, after 2 elections and more than 300 days of gridlock, Mariano Rajoy, tipped to form a minority government on Saturday. They'll be on thin ice. It's a minority government, but at least he's kept his job. The opposition socialists in disarray. Their leader, Pedro Sanchez, the first victim before the decision to abstain in that vote. But nowhere does the center-left seem in greater disarray than right here in good old France. A kiss and tell book on life in office after 4.5 years looks like, well, the kiss of death for incumbent President François Hollande, just months ahead of what seemed until recently like a probable run for re-election next spring. His own camp starting to desert him. One survey put out by the French Political Science Institute, CEPIVAL, and published in Le Monde, puts his favorability rating at 4%. That's right, that's less than half of the unemployment rate. Philippe Moreau-Chauvelet, that can't be right, 4%.
That can. That is
favorability rating?
Yes, yes, it's widely unpopular. It's the most unpopular president we ever had during the actual regime. It's really something incredible. And we didn't understand that book anyway. So, the Kiss and Tell book. Why did he do that? I mean, why? Why would he talk to a journalist, a couple of journalists, for hours and hours and hours? He has seen these journalists more than his own ministers. I mean, Emmanuel Macron, the Ministry for Finance here in France, complained about it. He said, these guys saw had more of the president's time than I ever had. So it's really strange. Why? Why this need for the talk? I mean, we are not psychoanalysts, all of us. We are not.
Do you think he wants to run for re-election? Do you think he will run for re-election?
I think it's a political, as Manuel Valls said, it's political suicide. We don't know why he committed this suicide. Only him knows, as most suicides go. But we don't know. I mean, it's really a mystery. This guy is a complete mystery from scratch. We didn't understand him when he was starting in office. We didn't understand him in the middle of his office. We don't understand him at the end of his office. Maybe later.
But 4%, I mean, okay.
It's not much, right?
The economy's not doing great,
No.
but he hasn't stolen funds that we know of. He hasn't committed some great crime.
It's not like people dislike him. He's kind of nice. It's just that they don't want him as a president. I mean, this guy could do something else. Let's do something. The French people are saying, let's do something else. Choose another profession, any profession, but not president. There is a divorce, really.
Hamdan Mostafavi?
He wanted to be the normal president. He's maybe too normal. Maybe
the French don't really want a normal president.
They don't want somebody that shows his shortcomings so blatantly. So.
Well, he wanted to be the normal president in contrast with
Sarkozy,
who everybody thought was nuts.
Yeah.
So that was the normal president line. You know, at 4%, if it gets any lower, then 0 will be within the margin of error.
Yeah, exactly. It's already in the margin of error. I mean, 1% of the French population is supposed to be really enthusiastic about him. Yeah, 1%. It's below the margin of error.
All right. So is this a problem? Is the problem with François Hollande, or is it a problem with the center-left in France?
Yeah, of course, it's both. But I think it's also his personality. But it's true that the left doesn't have anything to propose, any ideology, anything to say we are different from the right, because the right is going extreme right, and they're more close to normal right. So what they have to propose for France?
James Macaulay?
Yes, well, I think that it's interesting your question. Like, is this just a French problem, or is it about the kind of the European center left? I mean, of course, in each of the examples you bring up, Italy, Spain, and here in France, there are different variables. It's difficult to sort of see a through line that makes each case kind of comparable. But I think one thing on a kind of extremely general level is that the center left, which let's not forget was what built Europe into what we know today after the Second World War. I mean, is kind of on the out in the minds of many voters, and it's not quite clear yet what. I mean, it is clear that there is this kind of this vacuum. There is extremely kind of expanding discontent with elites and European institutions, but it's not quite clear what's going to fill the vacuum. I mean, we've seen certain trajectories kind of proposed, voters going which way or the other, either towards the kind of extreme left or you might call it the neoliberal right, or just the populist kind of far right, like the Front National type. But it's not really clear yet what's going to come to the fore. But I think that there is a real crisis in this kind of pan-European sensibility that was once just the status quo. That's not going to. It wasn't inevitable that it's going to stay with us.
I think really what it is it's a question of populism and demagoguery more than it is of ideology. The populists are driving the agenda. And how do populists drive an agenda? They do it through anger. They do it by saying, we're mad as hell, we're not going to take it anymore. Your life isn't as good as it was. We're being flooded with immigrants. The economy sucks. Everything is lousy. And people can get behind that if you've got somebody who's got a powerful personality who is saying, I'm going to set it all right. I'm going to make Europe great again. I'm going to make America great again, whatever the slogan is. That's not based on ideology. That's based on actually a narrow framework of anger and tapping into that anger, which is a very easy emotion to use in politics. And it's been used very effectively. Whereas, Hollande, he's Mr. Flanby, right? He comes across like a soft custard. He doesn't tap into anger. He doesn't tap into hope. He doesn't tap into anything. Whereas Le Pen, she drives the agenda. Have you noticed she doesn't say anything much these days? She's just driving the agenda because she set the tone for anger, and that's where everybody has gone, including the socialists, the socialist prime minister.
Exactly. And in many ways, she doesn't have to say anything at all because the center-right politicians will say it for her. They have adopted time and time again the rhetoric of this party that was once the fringe, but now kind of quietly has become closer to the mainstream.
And I would say that there is one thing you say, but there is we also have many intellectuals on the far right, and they have been producing ideology every day. I mean, on the air, on our main radio stations, on TV, in libraries. And they're really, they have set the tone of this campaign. I mean, that's true, the emotional factor is there. But what I don't understand personally is the disappearance of leftist intellectuals. We don't have any popular intellectual on the left anymore, and that's really surprising. Only on the far right. And it's an intellectual battle too, and they won it in a way.
We're going to look at the center left a little bit to the north in one region of Belgium that's had the whole continent holding its breath over the signing of a free trade deal with Canada. Now, after scuppering a signing that was scheduled for this week, French-speaking Wallonia says it's gotten the last-minute concessions it wanted and has voted to sign on to the CETA agreement.
There has been a CETA momentum in the Walloon democratic life. Who could have imagined this?
So we've heard the Prime Minister say they're okay, these Walloons, once you take the time to explain to them what it's all about. It's not only very far removed from the concessions we actually got, but also shows genuine contempt.
Yeah, who laughs most laughs last. What's your reaction to all this? Because this free trade deal held up by one region in one country among 28 in Europe. Some say it's a victory for democracy. Others say it shows that the EU is broken.
No, it shows that there is a difference between what the people want and what the European institution want. And most of the people will side by this guy in Belgium because obviously since 2005, when we had a referendum on the European treaty in France and we refused that, we said no to that treaty and it had been enforced anyway, the link between the population and the European Union is broken. So we don't trust in this. We don't have faith in any treaty anymore. And this guy is a kind of new hero for part of the French political class because of that. He stands in front of Europe and he's saying no. And it's very popular. It's a very popular stance.
At the end of the day, there will, though, be a free trade deal. I know it's just one country, Canada, but at the end of the day, the deal goes through.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be a broken record here, but a lot of the anger is about globalization, about this idea. There are all sorts of assumptions that Europe was built on, that the global order was built on over the last 50 years, about openness, about free trade, about free movement, about human rights, all of which is now basically called into question by people who are saying, stop the world, I want to get off. I don't want that anymore. I want to lead my life here in France quietly, the way I've always led it, have a good job, have employment, have the government take care of me, and it'll all be cool. And it's all being screwed up by these people who say we've got to have an open trade deal with the United States. We've got to have open trade with... Why is that good? Why is that good? I can tell you why that's good, but the politicians are not telling the people why that's good. The arrogance of the politicians has left people feeling like these decisions are all made without any consultation with them. Their lives are being totally disrupted, and they've got nowhere to go. And so where they go is to the ballot boxes and elsewhere to say, hell no.
Yeah, I think that's kind of building on what you were saying before, Philippe, about on the left and sort of for those who would defend the status quo as it's been, like the prime example being the Remain campaign in the Brexit vote. There wasn't. And to some extent, you see it with Hillary Clinton campaigning against Donald Trump. I mean, to
a large extent.
Yeah, well, but the idea is just to say that the alternative is unacceptable, that he's unqualified to be president, that it's stupid to leave the European Union, but never to make a positive argument for why we must remain in the European Union, what that was really about, or in the case of the American election, anything really beyond why Donald Trump is unfit to be president. We rarely hear kind of anything in that vein, any real defense of the, you could call it the leftist cause, the democratic platform, any number of things, but we just don't hear much about that. There is this sort of
It's like they don't have any beliefs anymore.
Yeah, it's just that, of course, we must accept this because it has been this way, and so it must remain.
All right, we're going to turn our attention now to Iraq and the announcement by the U.S. that there's a pause in the advance to consolidate gains around Mosul. It's a long and treacherous slog retaking Iraq's second city from ISIS, as evidenced by the uncovering of tunnels dug by militants. There's also stage managing a team of rivals who have to work together on the battlefield, the Kurds from the north and east, local Sunni and Turkmen fighters, and pro-Baghdad forces from the south. But now we're getting word that the U.S. and U.K. defense ministers announcing that the assault to take back ISIS's Syrian capital, Raqqa, is just weeks away. Well, enter the president of Turkey, who's been fighting ISIS while bombing U.S.-backed, that's right, U.S.-backed Syrian Kurdish forces. For Recep Tayyip Erdogan, they are too close to Turkey's PKK insurgents.
Once Al-Bab is retaken, we will move towards Raqqa. Last night, I had a long conversation with President Obama. I shared our plans with him, and I told him this: we don't need terrorist organizations like the PYD, YPG, or the PKK. They're two sides of the same coin. So I offered to help remove the IS group out of Raqqa.
Of course, Hamdan Mustafavi, he doesn't say what Barack Obama answered him during that phone conversation.
Yeah, of course. And I think he says there are two sides of the same coin, but that same coin was the only one standing in front of the Islamic State and Daesh when the rest of the world was just watching Kurdish Yazidis getting killed. So I think at some point America has to be clear about what they're going to do, and that we can see now in Mosul too. You couldn't do that without the Kurds. You can't just call the Kurds when you need them and then say, oh, sorry, you can go back to your, oh no, it's not a country, your little makeshift state. So they have to decide now, the Americans, and that will be the greatest thing the next American president has to do. Do I stand by Turkey or do I stand by the Kurds? Do I try to find a peaceful solution for Iraq that respects every different communities, or do I still wait to see where the wind is going to make my choice? So that's the main issue for me.
Do you agree, Christopher Dickey, that so far the Obama administration's sitting the fence or trying to manage both, and at one point there's going to have to be a reckoning, either it's the Turks or the Kurds?
Well, I think it's in a difficult position, the Obama administration, because there's really nobody you can trust there. The Kurds have their own priorities. Yes, they were fighting ISIS, but at another point they were making deals with the Assad regime, because the Assad regime was letting them carve out Rojava, their area in Syria. Then we have the Turks, who are supposedly our allies. Theoretically, you want the second biggest army in NATO to get involved in this. You know, if they're going to roll against Raqqa with that, well, God bless. And I don't think the YPG would be preferable to that. The Kurds would be preferable to that. But you can't trust Erdogan, because it's clear that he's made a deal with the Russians. The Russians want to be able to have a free hand in Aleppo, which is exactly the way they're acting, exactly what they're doing. And he wants a free hand in northern Syria to take out the YPG. Does that sound complicated? Yeah, hell yeah, it's complicated. And it's a mess. But the Obama administration is trying to deal with that in a context in which it doesn't want to just say what a lot of Americans think, sort of vaguely, they would like to see, which is, let's just put an end to this. Let's just go send in the American troops and be done with it. Well, I think enough Americans remember Afghanistan and Iraq to know we're not very good at doing that at the end of the day. So the Obama administration is trying to sit on the fence and trying to work with the Kurds and hoping that it can have a situation where the YPG helps to retake Raqqa. But my information from the field is that the YPG doesn't have the slightest interest in retaking Raqqa.
But anyway, the Turks don't want the Kurds in Raqqa.
No, all the YPG is going to do is try and consolidate, if they cooperate, is try and consolidate some of the front around Raqqa. Who actually goes into Raqqa, we still don't have any idea.
All right, so it could be more than a few weeks. We're talking about this being on the watch of the next U.S. president. 11 days to go till an election like, well, no other ever seen. It's all over, though. Forget the polls, forget early voting data from 37 U.S. states, Dateline Lima, Peru, and a gathering of renowned Peruvian shamans.
There will be some big changes in government and improvements with regards to economics. People will be better off. I see that the incoming leader will be a woman. A woman will be president.
A woman will be president. You heard it here first, James McCauley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's perhaps likely that we will see the same soon in the United States with a potential President Clinton. But I think the concern moving forward is what kind of mandate she might have if, in fact, she is elected, which seems likely, at least now, because you have Trump on his final offensive, which is in fact not against his opponent, but against the electoral process of the United States. And that may have very sinister consequences for what happens on November in just a few weeks' time.
Let's listen to the candidate. This was Thursday evening in Toledo, Ohio.
What a difference. You know, what a difference this is. And just thinking to myself right now, we should just cancel the election and just give it to Trump, right? What are we even having it for? What are we having it for? Her policies are so bad. Boy, do we have a big difference.
Now, when he says stuff like that, it's a bit glib, right?
A bit glib, but also a bit terrifying, I think. I mean, this is a candidate for our nation's highest office who is kind of making a mockery of the process by which we, as a democracy, sort of choose our leaders. And that's a little disconcerting, I would say. More than a little.
Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, what have you learned from the Trump campaign?
Oh, you can take the system by surprise, and you can hack the system when you're Donald Trump. You can impose yourself on a very old and conservative party that should have resisted better. And you can actually win by these tactics that he's playing all the time, short-term tactics in the medias, by the way of what the Americans call the outrage economy. Each time you produce a new outrage, so everybody speaks of you, and you're at the center of all the process. It's amazing that it worked. It's amazing. I would have never have believed that this outrage economy system was already in place and so strong. He knows how to play it. And you have to say that Hillary Clinton was probably the worst choice as a candidate that the Democratic Party could have done. She's a terrible campaigner, terrible.
I see Christopher Dickey nodding vigorously here.
No, I've said that Hillary is a terrible candidate a million times.
All right, but are we going to have a surprise? Because now the polls seem to indicate that she's pulling away.
Well, no, she's not pulling away. Actually, I mean, I follow Nate Silver's analysis. He's a statistician in the United States sports and politics. And he shows now that they're starting to converge once again. But he had a great metaphor yesterday, in fact, when his polls were showing, his combined polls were showing that Donald Trump only had a 16% chance of winning. And he said, that's about the same chance you have of losing a game of Russian roulette, which I thought was a particularly good metaphor and exactly the way I feel. But I think that Trump has tapped into all that anger in the American population, and he keeps telling people that they should be angry. What I love is this idea, make America great again, like America sucks so badly. How about let's make America sane again? That would be good. But Hillary's not maybe the person to lead us into that new sanity. She really is a terrible candidate and a bad politician.
Yeah, whatever happens, I think the problem, Hillary, I think she might win, even if we have seen many great surprises in the recent elections. But anyway, it will be a bumpy road on the beginning, and for even a long time, it will depend on many things. How the vote goes on, because if there is any doubt that in the counting or anything, of course the Trump camp will use that, and it will be a crisis of legitimacy for the American democracy. That will be terrible for the rest of the world. And then, even if she doesn't have that, she will have to deal with Russia and with all the countries that would have liked a Trump presidency, and not small countries.
Well, what they really want to do, what Russia really wants to do, is to discredit the system.
Yeah, of course.
They don't really care if Trump becomes president. Maybe they would like him because he's such an idiot. But I think that they would like to discredit the system, and that's the game they're playing with WikiLeaks and others.
Right, we're going to leave it there for now. Christopher Dickey, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, James Macaulay, Hamdan Mustafavi. Stay with us, though. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Shona Bhattacharya.
Hi, François. Hi, everyone.
We're talking about the U.S. elections here.
We are. The never-ending story, huh? No? It'll end? It'll end.
11 days from now.
Well, we have a new slogan, a hashtag that's going around about the campaign. It's hashtag draft our daughters. And it's not actually a new hashtag, even though it is the second most popular one today on Twitter, but it has taken on a life of its own. Twitter users are copying the campaign logo, and they're making these fake web adverts with them to support women being drafted. And a large majority of those tweets are coming from Trump supporters who are heavy on the irony. We have this one, for example, who says, Hillary wants to go to war with Putin. Let's draft our daughters and draft our wives to die in Russia. The photo says, I'm a proud liberal. I'm a proud feminist. I'm a proud hero's husband. Draft my wife. You see that Hillary slogan down there on the bottom left that has been used improperly, I should say. This one is another one. Wow, a jobs program for men and women. Anyone interested? And she's talking about World War III. Now, of course, there are some Clinton supporters who are also using these same memes. Yes, let's do this. This one talks about, let's see what Trump is going to say about a woman deleting 33 Russians. Of course, that is a play on the 33,000 emails. But actually, so it's true that Hillary Clinton voted in favor of a bill that would require women to sign up for the draft when they turned 18. And now that bill passed in the Senate in June, and in a rare demonstration, in fact, of bipartisanship. And even though Barack Obama is likely to veto the bill, not because of this provision, but because of others, the bill is still called the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, that was in June. Why are we seeing this now? It's because Donald Trump on Tuesday said that Clinton's plan for Syria, which includes a no-fly zone and safe zones on the ground for civilians, that those measures would lead to World War III. Trump says that those measures would provoke Russia having the nuclear bomb, and many of these tweeting, I've forgotten to show you all these articles that say exactly what I'm talking about. Here she is thinking, this is the June article about when is that? Talking about why she's supporting women in the draft. Donald Trump on Tuesday talking about World War III. That's because of Hillary Clinton's policies. And many of these people that we're seeing on talking about draft our daughters are actually responding to Trump's claim that Hillary is in fact a warmonger, as demonstrated by her support for the Iraq war and for, as well as her position on Syria today.
So tapping into isolationist sentiment there.
Yeah, and saying, well, the first woman president will send in the daughters as well, and this is all to also, it's a misogynist, right? It's saying that, well, this is what the first woman president would do. Well, congratulations. She's gonna send our daughters into the front lines.
Philippe Monchalet, we're going to have a presidential election here in France in the spring. Taking old stories from a few months back and
even a few years
them.
back, yes, it's something we could do.
The way social media works now compared to 5 years ago, are we going to see the same thing in France we're seeing in the United States?
Most probably, yes. Especially if Juppé is candidate. Juppé has a lot of issues added a lot of issues in the past that could resurface, and I think it will be used against him by the far right and by the Front National. We will going to see a very ugly campaign because the Front National has the unique opportunity to be in a lead in a general election, in a presidential election, and he wants to make a case out of it. So it will be a dirty campaign by all means.
And it'll play out on social media. I want to thank you, Shona Bhattacharya. Thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.